It's easy to get lost. This is The Revenue Maze, and I'm Valerie Cobb. Join me as we navigate the halls, dead ends, and U-turns on your path towards upward growth trajectory. The Revenue Maze is sponsored by Revenue North Star, guidance and execution through fractional revenue leadership, uncovering hidden revenues, and empowering small business growth through process-driven sales customized to your company environment. Welcome, everybody, to another great episode of The Revenue Maze. I'm so excited for this guest today. Honestly, I just love his story. His mom was a software engineer, and he was reading COBOL since he was 3 to 4 years old. In high school, he had his own business, so entrepreneurship was learned from his dad, and he was fixing computers. He's worked for YouTube, Google, and some of the biggest names out there. He is like a blockchain fanatic, and if you follow Bill Daly, he'll talk about that a little bit. He calls him a god, which is fantastic. And so anyways, I'm super excited at this time to welcome CEO and founder of AmateMint, Clinton Buie. Welcome, Clinton.
Sure, I really appreciate it. I started reading programming before I was even knew how to actually read and write. Now to be fair, I didn't know what I was doing. When you're 3 or 4, you kind of copy your parents. You see your mom come home with these large sheets, and you're kind of like, oh, what is this? And so you just kind of copy and mimic. Little did I know that I was learning how to program well before kindergarten. So,
that is so. I grew up in an interesting environment from a lot of computer and software engineering as well. But before we get to all of that fun stuff, because you have this great story and I'm super excited. I mean, everything from CrossFit to you name it, you've been doing it, right? So we love this, but we always answer one question. What is one thing that you can tell the listeners and viewers to help them get out of the revenue maze?
Sure. I can dive right into this is what everybody paid for, right? So yeah, no pun intended in terms of revenue. So in order to get out of the revenue maze, when you think about building a business and you think about revenue and you think about sales and you think about these things are around revenue, a lot of times people make it very complicated. They think before all things, revenue should be coming in. Even before, case in point, I'll tell a little story about a startup, and I'll dovetail into answering this question. The startup, like in startups in Silicon Valley, they have this notion where they raise a bunch of money, and they think, oh, I raised 10 million, 20 million, $30 million, and they have a bunch of signups or customers or anything, and then they end up spending all the money before they actually get the revenue generation turned on. And quite frankly, this kind of grinds my gears a little bit. It's like, in order to get the revenue turned on, you have to start turning it on. You have to turn it on immediately. You don't wait until later. I think Amazon and a lot of these large companies that said, oh, we're going to put billions in, and then we're going to turn it on. Like Google put billions into their company, and then turned it on later. This doesn't work for the vast majority of businesses out there.
Exactly.
That's a very specific, I have hundreds of millions, billions in terms of VC money backing me, and we have the luxury of being able to get users addicted before we can turn the revenue on. And so in order to get out of the revenue race, as soon on day one, before you even sold a product or before you even sold a service, if someone isn't able to write you a check based on your story alone, on what you're trying to do, then you need to go back to the drawing board, and you need to really, if you can't sell it with just your words, your mouth, and getting people excited and say, here's my credit card, where do I sign up? You need to go back to the drawing board. And in order to get out of the maze, wherever you are in the life cycle of building your product or your service, if you can answer that question at any point, you've solved the problem. And once
Yeah.
people are excited about it, they're going to tell about it. They're going to use it. They're going to share it with their friends and then with other business partners and stuff. But the key is around, like, if you can't get people excited about it to give you their credit card or to be able to write a check, then you need to get back to the drawing board, right? So that's the quickest way out of the revenue maze.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are some, I mean, it is so simple. Sometimes we talk about that and it's like, oh my gosh, it's so simple yet and fundamental, but so many do still think, well, I'm going to be Google or Amazon. I'm going to buy, I'm going to be, I mean, and in some essence, and in some ways, people will, when they're starting up, be somewhat in debt or not in the revenue stream at that point, right? But give some pointers to these smaller businesses on how you've kind of worked through that so that they look at that business case. That's what you're saying. If somebody's not going to give you a credit card, you probably haven't done your business case. So how do you kind of work through that with them?
Yeah, exactly. So the way I like to work through, I'll first tell a story about my own self, and then I'll tell how I work through with people, right? So before I even started AmateMint Group, AmateMint Group is the financial company which I own, which we have our own fund and we invest in deep tech, blockchain, and also artificial intelligence. But in regards to,
which is so cool, by the way.
Really cool. Yeah.
I just love everything. So anything that is for years, we could talk about that for a long time. But keep going. Tell the story.
Oh yeah, awesome. And I also own a consulting company called AmateMint Labs, where I literally help businesses in regards to tech get out of the revenue maze. They actually get customers and get customers signed up, and then go from literally 0 to 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 customers, paying customers, so that they can build their startup or they can build their small business or they can build anything. And so when I think about this with myself, how I actually started my business, that actually carries over into how I do it with my customers as well. So I started with one. Once you can get one person excited, and a case in point, like my background and skills, and this is very, like, I've been a software engineer for over a decade. I've been in tech since I was a kid.
Yeah.
So when I come to the table, I come with a lot of knowledge and wisdom around just starting from zero and kind of going up. But when I looked at my own business, I was very conservative. Part of revenue, the other flip side is how much money you're spending to run your business. Mm-hmm. And so it's great to bring in revenue, but if you don't survive, then it's not really gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I first started my AmateMint Labs, what I thought about was, it's like, okay, I'm starting my business. I have one customer. I think we signed it up for several $1,000s a month or something like that for the business. And I had X amount of expenses. Now, if my expenses exceeded how much of that I paid for per month, I either need to do one thing. I either need to reduce my expenses or I need to charge more. Surprisingly, I didn't have to charge more. I didn't reduce my expenses. And I think when I look at businesses and some of the businesses that I actually advise right now, quite a few need to reduce expenses so that their revenue can shine a lot brighter. And so, like, when they bring in revenue, they're not having paying too many people on staff. You'll be surprised. Like we hire and we get services we don't even need, but if you cut the bottom line and say, okay, what exactly do we need to get X and Y, then it makes the revenue shine a lot brighter. And then from there, once you're lean and efficient, when you run a better business, you get better results. And case in point, if you're lean here, you'll be lean with your service offerings and how you solve your problems for your customers. Case in point, I have one business that I'm working with right now, and there's a very high ticket item. Mm-hmm. They have a high expenditure rate, so that is something that or they're working on, but customers signing up, that is the number one thing I have them focusing on, right? Like, how can you get more customers in the door? After reducing costs and taking care of that stuff, like, that is the number one thing. And so how do I tell them to get customers in the door? Oh, well, so glad you asked. Oh.
You did. Yes, you're the host now. Go ahead.
Oh, well, thank you. I always wanted to host my own podcast. I really appreciate it.
I'm just teasing you. Go ahead. I would have asked the question, but how do you do it? Go ahead.
So we look at the pain points that the customers want to solve. Like, what is something that keeps the customers up at night? And quite often, especially in any industry, asking the CEO, okay, what's keeping you up at night? And they'll just tell you because they have noticed, like, oh, this is costing me way too much money. The Fed just keeps raising interest rates, or and we just don't have any way of being able to service this. Or I have a hard time. It takes forever to find leads or something like that. Once that is identified, then asking how much would you pay for that to have that off your hands usually is the best second in to being able to figure out how much revenue you can be able to bring in. And sometimes it may align with the business. Hopefully, if the business has done their homework, they'll know kind of some just general area where there's problems are. But 9 times out of 10, they'll give you a number. They'll be like, oh my God, well, if this were off my hands, I'd pay $2,000, $4,000 a month. It's like, oh yeah, well, that's comparable to this company over here. Yeah, you know what? I mean, for when we first get started, we'll do it for $1,500. Oh my God, you'll do it for $1,500? Oh, thank you so much. You're giving me a deal. It's like, oh no, thank you very much. That's typically how I advise my companies on how to be being able to generate revenue and generate quickly, especially from zero, because sometimes just getting the first customers in the door is hardest.
That can, and when you're talking about if you can solve for that, we talk about a lot at Revenue North Star about healing the pain and discovering what that is, and then figuring out how to go from there is extremely important, right? And what are they willing? Sometimes I find that people tend to, in the cost-cutting efforts, in the name of cost-cutting, step on a dollar to pick up a dime, right? Mm-hmm. That's a very common thing that I see. So how have you been able to balance that? Because balance is going to be huge with that, because there was a LinkedIn post recently that was, oh, the CFO is always cutting sales and marketing and blah, 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 blah. And, and of course that got tons of people from marketing and sales.
But no, I really like how you said step on a dollar and to pick up a dime. And oftentimes what's really challenging is, like, when running a business, there's so many things that seem urgent, but there's just not important. And there's things that are important, but they just don't seem urgent. And so the important thing, but that's not urgent, is for people to just kind of take a second and calm down and look at the resources that they have around them. And the stepping on the dollar to pick up a dime, the person just wasn't watching where they were stepping, which means that they were in a hurry. On the dollar, and they saw a dime. It's like, oh, I wasn't. They just immediately focus on the dime and pick up the dollar. That's what happens when there's not mindfulness and taking the time to step back and realize, like, hey, where are we? Where do we want to go? What's around us? And being able to use that to be able to effectively see the dollar that they can actually pick up, and maybe step on the dime and pick up the dollar. So, but with that said, for some of the businesses that I run into, they do run into that. And working in, I saw this at most of the large companies that I worked at. They immediately cut marketing and sales, and you're like, actually, sales is what's bringing in. Like, if you're not closing, then I don't really know what else is good. Like, why are you cutting the people who are bringing in the revenue? Like, it's like, because they, for whatever reason, they just think it's like, oh, our numbers are down, it's sales fault, right? But if you do a holistic analysis of an entire company, 9 times out of 10, the salespeople can't do their job because, I hate to point the finger at myself, but in the engineering, made a mistake that is very hard to sell around, right? Like, so no, I really like that analogy, step on a dollar, pick up a dime.
Yeah.
Like you could probably like take a step back and be more efficient engineering wise, or be more efficient in other areas, and then support the areas which are actually going to close on revenue. And so, no, I really appreciate that.
Well, and that's the balance portion of it is kind of what we're talking about, and not wanting to say, well, it's any one thing. And I like the fact that you are talking about the analysis. What is really the problem? What's the root cause analysis of the issue? Is it could be, I tell people all the time, yeah, it could be your sales team, it could be your product, it could be the customer's journey, it could be a bunch of things, right? And we just don't
Right.
know until we get deeper into what the challenge, the symptom is showing, right?
Exactly.
We don't really know. But at the end of the day, getting and looking at the analysis of what is happening and finding that pain is what I felt like you were hugely adept at doing. Finding the pain, going in, figuring out what's going to fix it, and working on fixing it. So anyways, to me, that's huge. And I think a lot of people don't, a lot of organizations, I don't say just people, but a lot of organizations don't take the time to look under the hood, so to speak, right? And see
Right.
what really, we hear a chink, and then we think, oh, it's this, and we run off in a direction without stopping and doing those sort of things. So anyways, but I have to always ask this question too. I mean, kind of what led you here today? I mean, honestly, creating your company, all of those things. I talked a little bit in the intro about your, obviously, mentors in your life, which were it looked like somewhat your parents, right? And everything. But what got you to this today?
That's a good question. I've kind of lived my life based on interest. Like what, like I would find something, and this is even true when I was very young. I saw what my mom was doing, and I was just interested. And I'm like, oh, well, let me just look at what she's doing and just kind of dive in head first. When I was in high school, I was just interested. I saw computers, I saw people playing video games, but I wasn't just interested in playing. I was interested in understanding, well, how does this machine display the pixels on the screen? Like, how does this actually save information onto this box here? What is this box here? What is this hard drive? What is this? Like, I just kept asking a lot of questions, and the more questions I asked, the more answers I got, which led to more and more questions, which led to more and more curiosity. And so, when I think about career, and when I think about lots of things in life, I think going with where we're interested in and finding, and sometimes there's things we're interested in. Like I'm gonna be out, like I was very much interested in CrossFit for like 5, 6 years, and as I started getting older, I was like, kind of like back off of that a little bit. I kind of want to save my knees and save like other parts of
Uh-huh.
my body. But I was very interested in it because the people that and the community that I was interested in, they just had a can-do attitude. I just didn't really find anybody who said that they couldn't do anything. Right? Like it's just this overcoming attitude, and I was very interested. And everybody was
Yeah.
in shape, and so I was like, "Oh wow, that's awesome." Um, but going back to
To boot.
yeah, like they were fantastic. I was like, "Oh wow." So yeah, but just going back to just
Yeah.
curiosity, like in every stage, if there was something I was curious in, I would just dive into it and I would go down the path. And I, I will talk about some of my mistakes. Like the biggest mistake I've ever made was going after like status, or going after money,
Okay.
or just like those instances in my life it just turned out to be miserable. I got what I was looking for, but I lost the joy. Like I lost the peace, and I lost a lot of the parts in my life, which interest and curiosity just kept me young and youthful. It's like keeps me happy. So how did I get to where I am? With a AmateMint group, I once again I started investing over a decade ago just because I was curious. I started investing in Bitcoin before 2000 in 2013. I was curious. I was working at a startup. Uh, I started investing in stocks. I started investing in uh, like stocks, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then I started looking into angel investing. I just was very curious, and it's kind of what led me to where I am right now. And same thing with computer science and computer technology, but uh, eventually led to building these businesses, and I kind of enjoy it. It's kind of fun. So,
Well, and it seems like you do enjoy it. And I love the curiosity aspect of it. But I would also probably say that I don't know, we haven't known each other very long, but I would say that you have a bit of courage on top of it. So you're courageous to go after the things that you're curious to. Some people really hesitate a lot on doing that. I sometimes I run into, you said one of the biggest mistakes, I run into death by analysis sometimes, right? And that's paralyzing at times because you could look at multiple outcomes. I'm a sci-fi geek and I always think of, Star Trek and the episodes that they've had that have all these variables and outcomes. And it's like, you know, and the computer can't find one that can get them out of it. And and we're in this kind of weird scenario. And you can, it's paralysis by analysis. So I think that there's a fair amount of courage that goes along with the curiosity to also execute. I could be wrong. You can tell me I'm wrong, but that's, I'm good with that.
um, it's interesting. I never thought of it as courage. Now that I think about it, it is like thinking about my friends and family, and I think about a lot of different things. I Somebody did say like, "Oh wow, that's kind of courageous that you leave Google to go and start your own financial investment fund." Like like Google pays very well. Like why don't you just stay there and just like get paid at Google? But it, it's it may not it may seem courageous on the outside, but if you like, I remember I firmly believe I saw the data around where I was going into blockchain and also into AI. Like I left right before the AI was like became very very hot, and so when I told people this, they were like, "Why are you leaving Google? Like Google's so safe." And it's it is, but this is several orders of magnitude more profitable, right? And so then all this AI stuff starts coming out, and you're like, "Oh, now I see what you're. Oh, yeah." Um, yeah, I guess being a researcher, I just had I guess a knack for just kind of seeing things right before it happens, or 5 or 10 years down the road. But I didn't, to be honest. I guess I just, I saw the opportunity and it made me excited. I saw a future. I saw a future where it was going to be like really big, um, and it's funny that I'm mentioning this, and I first started off and said at the beginning about if you can't generate that excitement for someone to give you their credit card, that same excitement for a future is what gets revenue generating into your company. If you can tell that story to your customers, your potential customers, and you can get them excited where they just have to hand over money, and they know they're going to save a lot of money, and they know they're going to make a lot of money from what you're going to offer them. That that right there is will make you switch directions, change, and be bold to go down the path that you want to go. And I yeah, it's all like the world, the universe is very connected. I never thought about that until now. Like they're very connected. Like being able to be excited about a future that is yet to be brought to fruition. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that's where quote unquote the courage comes from. Like you
Yeah.
just I was just excited about what was going to come down the pipeline, and I believed in it. And I believe if people get their customers excited, revenues.
Yeah. Well, and that, I don't know if you have some history with Stanford, but obviously Jim Collins, good to great. It is that flywheel or that sort of momentum that you're talking about that a lot of founders have. It's when they try to scale past it and bring on all their teams to then basically share that passion with them in a way that they don't get head trash with it because it has to scale at some point, right? Whether that is through, and and obviously there's different org chart, team structures, all of that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying any specific one, but I have found that a lot of your pivots or turnarounds are because that passion that you're talking about didn't translate from the founder when they tried to scale, right? And how have you overcome that with the companies that you're helping? Because you're helping companies do this, and so I'm curious. I'm also a very curious person, so I ask a lot of questions. So, yeah, how do you get them past that when they're scaling?
No, this is a good question because founders run into this a lot. Their first 5 or 6 or 7 people are friends or close acquaintances, and then when you really start hiring, and you have to like run a company, then things get really interesting. Like that, like people, you have to empower people to, or enable people to be able to do their jobs and not have a lot of oversight. The best founders are the best communicators. So the reason why that translate doesn't actually happen is because the founder is failing to communicate that transfer. And there's studies that have shown that founders that can communicate very well can raise money very well, can get customers very well, can hire very well. It just translates to almost every single. It's like a person who can run a 5-6 minute mile can jump in between different sports a lot easier than someone who's like not in shape, right? Like it translates so seamlessly across so many different facets that it is something that founders really, really definitely need to work on. I personally have a coach. His name is Robbie Crabtree. Same shameless plug. He's great. Like I'd say, hey, how do I communicate this as effectively as possible so I can get the results I'm looking for? And we sit down, and in order for us to either raise money or bring in revenue, we figure out how to make it compelling. We figure out how to make it exciting, and we figure out like, okay, this is how we get people to row in the same direction. And so, yeah, that communication is key. And as you mentioned, in Good to Great, transferring that energy, that passion from the founder to the employees, to the customers, so that when you get sales, when you get revenue in, is very, very important. And I highly recommend people just, if you don't know how to do it, it can be taught. And I think the great founders are constantly learning. They have a growth mindset. They have no problem saying, I have no idea how to do this. I would like to hire an expert. So yes.
I kind of like that. It has an air of humility to it. They're willing to ask the question. A lot of times when I've come up in some companies, part of it is the hand is up. I don't want to learn, but I'm going to hire you to learn. And it's like, well, you're not ready to learn. I had opera students. I coached opera for like 10 years and sung it for 18. And
you coached opera and sang opera?
Yes.
My father actually sang in Oberlin, opera in Oberlin.
Really? How exciting. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, then you also understand how technical and difficult that can be, right? And it's actually music is quite mathematical in its roots, right? So we could talk about that for a bunch of times, but I had one student one time, and I tell this story all the time. She came to me, and she wasn't winning competitions. She came to me. She wanted to win. And every time you try to coach, and my coaching style is very much lead out with what went well, then what can we change a little bit, and then how do we move into the next step, right? And so it's never, wow, I'd hear opera coaches that were screaming and yelling at their students and all this kind of stuff. And I just never responded that way. And so anyways, 6 months went on, and she just wasn't making any progress. And her mom and I discussed and said, literally, okay, this isn't working out. And I said, I agree. She needs to go back to her other coach. She is not ready to listen. And it taught me a bunch of things. Good news is she came back 6 months later and said, I'm ready. And then she started, not that I'm that great, please don't misunderstand that statement, but it's all about, and she started winning competitions. And it wasn't so much that I'm this great coach. It was that she was willing to change at that point. And a lot of times you get into some of these companies and they're like, we've been doing it, you know, the first thing you get is the hand. It's like, well, we've been doing that. How's that going to be different? Well, how's that going to be different? You know, that's a good question. How is it going to be different? Because if you're not willing to listen and change and be, you know, hungry, humble, and smartish, right? If you're not willing to change as a founder, owner, or company in whole, then yeah, you're wasting a lot of dollars because you just want to be told, you know, like my vocal student that one time, she just wanted me to tell her what a great job she was coming to sing for me. And I'm going, I'm here to prepare you for your recitals, your competitions, you know, you're going in, my brain just went blank. You're going in to stand up in front of a bunch of judges, whether that's for a role or whether that's for a competition. And I'm your safe place. They are not your safe place. And you know, and at the end of the day, you know, you'd get a lot of people like that. So how did you deal with some? I'm sure I've identified a persona, right? I'm sure you've had some of that in the past. How did you work through it?
No, this is a good observation, right? Like, you could have the best wisdom in the world fall on deaf ears because the person wants to do it their work, they want to do it their way. And this brings up a really interesting story. So when I was in undergrad, I came into undergrad, and I remember I had like mostly loans my first year. Coming out of high school, I had like all loans, and I remember I was like, I do not want to graduate from college with loans and debts or anything like that. So what I did was I was like, I'm gonna apply for every scholarship in engineering. But what I did was, and I really like how you said that your coaching was a safe space before you get to the judges, so that you can tweak yourself so that you can win. What I did was I was like, I put myself in the judge's shoes and said, what type of application, what type of person do I need to be when applying for this that will make them say yes?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people, they say, I'm going to show up however which way I want. I'm going to talk whatever, I'm going to like sing whichever way I want. I'm going to sales, I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to try to generate revenue, whatever. I'm going to try to do anything the way I want, instead of saying what is going to make them say yes, putting them like, let's be honest, like we've all written checks or bought things before. So we all can easily have empathy in what's going to win. And the case in point from what you just mentioned, just taking a second and saying, okay, what's going to make the judges say yes to you? Yeah. Like what's going to make them write that check or write them say, oh, you deserve to win this competition. And it comes down to empathy. And so what I did was I was like, I'm going to be a judge. I'm going to read all my applications, and I'm going to give myself my own score, and I'm going to make my application or my essays look like something that I would want to like I would want to invest in. After my first year, I ended up on a full ride scholarship ever since, all the way through master's program. Like that worked tremendously well. That has actually worked in fundraising. That's worked in just about anything. Like if you really, really want to be successful at something, and you know that on the other side, someone's going to judge our output and our behavior, it's best to put ourselves in their shoes and ask ourselves, what would we want to see? Or better yet, put yourself, or better yet, go to an expert that has been in that shoes and ask, it's like, what? Like, I'm pretty sure being an opera singer coach, you may have judged a few competitions, or you may have judged, you had to judge something, right? You had to be able to know the difference between the bad. It's good. So just taking that time in that moment to say, wait a second, right? And if I can't say yes to me, given that I'm in the judge's shoes, then nobody else will.
Yeah.
And so I've taken that, and I've done that through business, through jobs, through running this company, and it works. It works. Like when I start to feel like, oh, I would invest like $10 million, $20 million to me, like then it becomes easier to be able to receive, because then other people start thinking the same thing, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's amazing advice. And at the end of the day, we could go into a lot of psychological things involved around that. But in principle, for me, it totally makes sense. If I wouldn't write the check, then why would I expect others to write the check? Right. And
Right.
I think that kind of sums up even the episode, is really get yourself ready to have people write the check. And if you are, then, and the stars and the moon, and if your product is out there and people know that it's available and those kinds of things, then get ready to have revenue come through the door, because you figured it out. And take the time to figure it out. Don't just think because you like it, I like it, therefore the rest of the world likes it. I mean, we could get into all sorts of what other, there's like 10 other people that have a different opinion. Someone gave me an example of opinions, and the number of opinions are out there, right? So you would be trying to capitalize on the ones that would fill that need that item, and would they write the check, So I love that. So anyways, you have this great company. You've mentioned one of your coaches, mentors. That's fabulous. Is there anybody else as an honorable mention that has influenced you in this at this point?
No, that's a good question. So I have I have many mentors and coaches, and I am a firm believer in, if there's an area where I don't understand, or I will go to someone who's been successful in that area and just ask them, because time is short, life is short, and
Mm-hmm.
I could be spending decades trying to figure it out the hard way, or I can ask somebody who's figured out, they already spent the decades, and they can just show me the correct path. No, Dorothy Andreas is my business coach, and she's just phenomenal, and we do a lot of work around not only just like how to like run a company, but also around the emotional side to it too. Like I think fairly few people understand just how emotions play into so many different things that we do,
Oh,
and internally and externally. Like how we manage our internal is way more important than what's happening on the outside. Like I had several times where I've had to calm people down to get what was needed to be able to move forward. Like total experts in the area, completely the best, but
yeah.
emotions got in the way, and you almost need tools to be able to get through and say, okay, objectively speaking, this is what we got to do, and basically like ended up doing outstanding after that. But that internal emotional stuff is very important. I give Dorothy Andreas a lot of the credit for that, for like teaching me a lot of that stuff. Uh, I could go down the line, but yes, there's so many.
Yes to a lot. Okay. Yeah. I find, and it is a bit odd, in training a lot of different sales team members. I have found there's a lot of head trash involved just with sales team members alone, not just the founders and stuff like that. And trying to get them to calm down and think clearly and we call it the head trash, obviously. Get the head trash out. Let's look at things from a lens that is not clouded from that. But you would be shocked and amazed at how many do not really place enough stock in emotional intelligence, basically,
Right.
and what that does mean to your company, to your product, to the customer you're speaking with, and being able to diffuse that situation. So, and I found that with most successful leaders, they do have a big set of coaches or a big set of mentors that they talk to on a regular basis. And I think some of the next generation is fearful to ask for that. Like for some reason, that's Yet all of our big football players, basketball players, everybody has a coach.
Yeah.
Those very successful people have a coach. And you were going to comment on something. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, no, not at all. Like, as a matter of fact, the elite athletes and the elites have like half a dozen coaches. They
Yeah.
have coaches specifically for sprinting, or they have a skills coach. They have a psychologist. They have someone who helps them with their meals. They have coaches for almost every specific aspect of their life, and they all synergistically work together. And that's how they're able to play at that extremely high level. And when, as a business owner, that's what I have. I have several different types of coaches specifically for specific parts of the business, advisors as well. If you don't run your life like that, then it's kind of like you're only going to get so far, because what we're given, well, unless unless you have a parent that's already kind of done it, they did everything, and they could just like tell you everything. But that's rare. I'm doing stuff a little bit different than my parents, right? But no, that's incredibly important to be able to have experts that you can lean on to be able to overcome some of the blocks that are getting in the way of our success, especially when it comes to making money in regards to revenue.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's amazing. It's been fabulous. I'm sure people would love to know just one place that they can reach you at, Clinton.
Oh, cool. They can reach me. They can find me on LinkedIn. That's one place you can find me. That's probably the best way.
Okay.
Professionally, I have people go through LinkedIn. Or you can find me on my email, which is clinton.buie, clinton.buie, at AmateMint.com. AmateMint is AMATEMINT.com. And this is all on the AmateMintGroup.com website. So if you forget, you can just go to our website.
And we'll list all of it too in the show notes and things like that for the transcript and all that as well. I know that you're very approachable. I know that you could help a lot of people out there. So it would be so fabulous to have a place where they could just sort of reach you in the event. But really, I am so grateful that you accepted to be on my show. It's been a great addition. The dialogue has been fabulous. I've learned so much from you, and hopefully the listeners and the viewers love it, like it. If you're listening and you love it, please let Clinton know that you love it. Obviously, but we always appreciate that. And thank you for listening and viewing. It's been amazing, all of you guests and listeners and viewers. So thank you again, Clinton, for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. To all the listeners, good luck on the revenue. Is like we're all still learning. Hopefully, like the wisdom that we can share, we can build and grow upon it.
Thank you all for joining another great episode. Hats off to all you small businesses out there. I can't wait for the next episode.